Take two. Here's the second video, I promise. Again, I have to go to work today too, so only 20 minutes. But hey, you're getting two videos, 2 days, and I'm off tomorrow, so we'll see about that. Alright, let's start.
In my head wondered what would happen if the Pegasi ever learned the truth about this whole world below them. I moved forward, following the voice, nudging open the door to the office where an old radio sat, dusty and neglected, the face above the dial still glowing as the speakers gave DJ Pony's voice a slightly tinny echo. "One last thing, and this is to the stable dweller herself. Another message from my assistant. But don't worry, children. I read it this time, and it's perfectly chaste." I froze, my mind conjuring everything from another devastatingly embarrassing promise to another warning as soul-breaking as the warning about Stable 2. She says, "Wherever you are right now, I'm thinking of you. Look up at the darkness of the night sky and know that I'm looking up at the same darkness with you. We are never apart, no matter how far your drive to help us all takes you from this place. For you are here in my heart, always. I love you, little Pip." I felt my heart gush, bursting with joy. Oh, now ain't that just romantic? Don't that just tug at your heartstrings? When did my assistant get so cheesy? Oh, and there's a P.S. 31. Huh. What's 31 supposed to mean? My mind simply went blank. I was drowning in embarrassment, burning alive from the heat that suddenly flushed through my body. "Oh dear," Zenith intoned behind me, her exotic voice holding not a trace of actual sympathy. She leaned forward and whispered into my ear, "I should tell Velvet Remedy so that she does not hear it first from strangers, no?" I collapsed, dying of sheer humiliation. Homage had banished me to a world of embarrassment, and Zenith had imprisoned me in a dungeon of anticipated torment.
They're both
in that world I
taking
had been
too much
banished
pleasure
to.
out of that.
It wasn't
Both
until hours
Homage
later that I
and
realized
Zenith,
Zenith's
like,
words
oh.
carried with them the implicit hope that Velvet Remedy would survive. By making me certain Velvet would soon be teasing me endlessly, Zenith dispelled my fear that I was about to lose her. The medical cabinet opened
Don't
with
worry,
ease,
Lil Pip.
the lock hardly open.
Companions never die unless you're on hardcore mode. Then again, with your amount of XP gain and how shit's been going, you might actually be on hardcore mode. Shit.
A worthy challenge. Zenith began to collect the medicines and healing bandages inside. So far, the hospital had been a treasure trove of lesser supplies, but not yielded the more potent potions we had been desperately searching for. I looked across the room filled with rotting beds, tattered partitions, and toppled IV stands. A night wind blew through broken windows, making the curtains dance like ghosts. A foul scent of 100 hellhounds drifted through the room. I glanced outside and saw them crawling all over the building across from us like a swarm of bees. I wondered why they didn't just destroy the array. But maybe they couldn't. Maybe there was something in the pulse that didn't allow them to. Still, with that many trying to clamber onto the roof, it was only a matter of time before they destroyed it just by accident. I looked out the other door. There was a nurse's station across the hall. No red lights on my EFS. I let Zenith know where I was headed and slipped out. Pressing an ear to the door, I thought I heard a snake-like hiss. I checked my EFS again, but there were no threats. The door was locked. Again, it was hardly a challenge. But when I tried to push the door open, it didn't want to budge. I shoved, throwing my weight against it, and I heard a crash from inside as the door opened half a yard. Dust and old plaster spilled out of the opening. A fast-clicking metronome quickly burst from my pip buck. I poked my head through, coughing, and saw the ceiling had collapsed, filling most of the room. Broken terminals and office supplies littered the floor around large hunks of structural material. I could see partially into the room above where a bathtub teetered, hanging from the washroom above only by the plumbing. Water sprayed out of a crack in the pipes, soaking the rubble of the floor below and draining down into the level beneath us through a section of the nurse's station floor which had given way from decades of water damage. There wasn't much room inside, but I saw that I could reach a locked metal cabinet with the word "confiscated" written in large red letters. I removed my saddlebags and squeezed in through the opening. This metal cabinet proved a tougher lock. Within my skills, but still a worthy challenge. At least, it was enough of a challenge that I felt a touch of pride as it opened. Inside were drugs. Buck, Dash, Mintals, and a variety of powerful painkillers, as well as other pills and powders which I did not recognize.
You're going to need the painkillers.
There were other things, too. A memory orb. A knife with a
shit.
blade that shimmered with an unnatural purple sheen.
Oh, that's cool.
A copy of Zebra Infiltration Tactics.
Good.
I floated my saddlebags to me. With a telekinetic push, I dumped the entire contents into one of them. A tin of Party Time Mintaus landed on top. My heart skipped a beat. I wrapped the tin in a magical sheath. Do we really have time for this? The little pony in my head asked. Hurry, we can dump it later. I knew she was lying. I knew I needed to get rid of it right now. If I carried it around with me, the temptation to take one when things got bad might be more than I could bear. Oh, come on, you're stronger than that, the pony insisted. And I was, wasn't I? Or what if Zenith could use it for a potion or something? It'd be a shame to waste it.
Fuck.
Damn it, I was taking way too much time. I closed the saddlebags, floating them out ahead of me. I quickly slithered out of the nurse's station, trying to make up for lost time. I'd been so distracted by my inner struggle that I didn't even notice the red light at the very edge of my EFS compass. There were no goddesses. There couldn't be for what I was seeing to be allowed to exist.
Oh god, what is it?
The thing that shuffled down the hall before me had once clearly been a pony.
Oh god, what is it?
There was enough of pony left in its face to tell the horrifying truth.
Is it a centaur? Those are, in Fallout 3, when I first encountered a centaur, like, that thing was fucking horrifying. Oh god, is it? Oh.
There was no way to describe the vile, sickening body of the thing. The best my brain could manage was the idea that a pony had started to melt, losing all her fur and keeping only sporadic tufts of her mane and tail, only for the flesh beneath to stop melting, arbitrarily and not quite all at once, and then begin to bloat and metastasize. Its eyes, sunken and huge and red, stared into mine. Its tongue had swollen and stretched, bursting out of its muzzle and spilling into tendrils as they hung down from the wreckage that had once been its mouth. The tentacles writhed individually, as if in great pain. I was petrified by the sight, rooted to the floor with no ability or will to move. I wanted to run screaming as that split tongue started undulating and whipping out, stretching the length of the hall, each wrapping wetly around one of my hooves. I fell, dragged forward towards the squirming flesh blob, my gaze locked onto its eyes. I tried to scream again, but somehow it had stolen my voice. The tongues lifted me over the mass of writhing, furless tissue. As another tongue tentacle pushed out of its muzzle, the tentacles twisted me over. My eyes turned to the ceiling, and my paralysis broke.
This better not be going where I think it's going.
Letting out a scream of terror. These tongues were impossibly strong. I couldn't pull my hooves free. It continued to rotate me until I faced away from it, the hallway behind me upside down. I witnessed Zenith dash out of the room to save me, then stop, eyes wide and locked in place. I felt that new tongue slither across me, and I realized with abject terror that the flesh blob did not intend to kill me. No, 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 no. I screamed in a mix of fury and primal panic.
Fucking knew it!
No, 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 no. Blam. No, 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 no. My screams were punctuated by the fury of little Macintoshes as I made my weapon fire blindly into the mass of living flesh. I was hit by a cloying reek. I felt the tongues go slack, dropping me. I hit the creature. Its body felt like a warm and slimy
It was fucking going where I thought it was going, wasn't it? Oh, shit.
And I bounced into the floor. I scrambled away, feeling sickened, loathing my body where I had touched it. Oh, little Pip, I am so sorry, Zenith cried out, galloping up to me. I got shakily to my hooves. Little Macintosh's bullets had torn gaping holes in the meat of the thing. What is that?
It's a fucking tentacle monster.
I do not know, Zenith said fearfully. But we must be cautious. There may be more of them, and they possess a stare. We moved through rows of the hospital pharmacy. Our hooves left tracks through the spilled powders that covered the floor. Many of the stacks had partially collapsed, spilling their contents onto the tiles below.
Fucking okay, I got this weird... I love anime and all its little facets, so that's why I got this little weird grin, but that's fucked up. Like, on one hand, I'm disgusted. On the other hand, the part of me that loves all anime is like, fucking tentacle monsters. They're a classic of both anime and role-playing games. Oh, fuck. Oh. There's more of them. That's why the hellhounds avoid this place. They don't want to get butt raped. Ah, fuck this place. Fuck this hospital.
I waved the lamp of my pit buck over the barely legible labels on a shelf which still hold little jars of unsullied medical treasures. Zenith trotted up, a sack held in her teeth which she had found in the housekeeping section behind us. She scooped a seemingly random choice of tiny jars into the sack with a hoof. I didn't know if any of these would help either Velvet Remedy or Calamity, but I had learned to trust in the value of Zenith's alchemy and brewing. We both froze at the sick shuffling sound of another of the flesh blobs. Dropping the sack, Zenith moved towards the pharmacy counter as I moved to the pharmacy door. Zenith pushed herself up, peering over the counter cautiously. And she didn't move. Every muscle in her body was locked in place. I could hear the softest sound of strangling in her throat as the slick tongues of the thing in the room beyond distended and started to stretch, wrapping around her. I darted out of the pharmacy.
You could use that. Like, focus on where she's looking and point your gun that way. Like, the person's right here and they're looking that way and they're frozen. Don't look yourself. Just take your gun. Look at them, take the gun, and shoot in the direction they're looking. Or use explosives. Explosives would probably be better.
And around the corner, getting the barest glimpse of the creature before squeezing my eyes furiously shut and firing several bursts from the zebra rifle into where the creature had just been. I heard an unearthly squeal and was assaulted by the acrid stench of the thing's bulbous flesh burning away. I opened my eyes to see Zenith wrench herself free from the limp appendages as the fire climbed up them towards her. She barely avoided getting burned. "Sorry," I said with a grimace as we both coughed and gagged, mentally noting that the zebra rifle was no longer to be used against these, or for that matter any tainted creature considering my run of luck with the pairing of the two. Zenith tied off the bag, and I helped tie it across to her from her satchel.
Like, this hospital's
Together, we moved to the nearby stairwell, not taking the time to peek in the garbage bins. This was already taking far longer than I was.
What about Calamity and Velvet Remedy? Oh, what of those things? Can they go out into the sun? Or, like, oh, fuck. You gotta check on those guys.
Was comfortable with. And that comfort didn't even include the creepy itching that was starting to spread inside me. According to the old paint, the next floor down was the emergency care and operating rooms.
Oh, that's their breeding ground, isn't it?
Restoration potions in this entire nightmare. You had to sneak up on them from behind, we quickly learned. To look the slithering flesh mounds in the face was to be paralyzed, body and mind. We didn't know if those things could affect more than one mare at a time, but neither Zenith nor I were foolish enough to risk it. They were, however, the opposite of hellhounds in many ways. They were slow, stupid monstrosities, possessing no tactical skill, driven only by the basest urges. And their flesh was weak. Even a low-caliber bullet would cause great stinking ruptures in their tuberous bodies. We made it to the surgical level. Benches lined the wall of what had once been a small waiting room. Rotted periodicals stained the floor. There were a few pony skeletons here, 2 with cracked pelvic bones. An ill shudder racked me as it occurred to me that the poor mares had not been killed by the horror which had invaded them, but the horror that had come out. Beyond the waiting room was a hallway which ended in...
I wasn't paying attention. Can I hear that again?
Not taking the time to peek in the garbage bins. This was already taking far longer than I was comfortable with, and that comfort didn't even include the creepy itching that was starting to spread inside me. According to the old paint, the next floor down was the emergency care and operating rooms. They were our best bet for extra-strength restoration potions in this entire nightmare. You had to sneak up on them from behind, we quickly learned.
Yeah.
To look the slithering flesh mounds in the face was to be paralyzed, body and mind. We didn't know if those things could affect more than one mare at a time, but neither Zenith nor I were foolish enough to risk it. They were, however, the opposite of hellhounds in many ways.
I went too far back.
They were slow, stupid monstrosities, possessing no tactical skill, driven only by the basest urges. And their flesh was weak. Even a low-caliber bullet would cause great stinking ruptures in their tuberous bodies. We made it to the surgical level. Benches lined the wall of what had once been a small waiting room. Rotted periodicals stained the floor. There were a few pony skeletons here, 2 with cracked pelvic bones. An ill shudder racked me as it occurred to me that the poor mares had not been killed by the horror which had invaded them, but the horror that had come out.
Oh, God. That's... Oh. Like, does it form... Like, how does... Why do I want to know? like, I was thinking about how the process of the birth and the thing happens that would shatter your pelvic bones. But, like, at the same time, I have to wonder... Oh, God. Like... There's like a fucked up part of me that wants to know how this process works. Like, the whole thing's going through my head, and like, God damn, I don't, like. It just keeps playing in my head how this works. Like, is it fully formed and it crush it? Like, I know this has no fucking bearing whatsoever, but small things like this get in your head.
Beyond the waiting room was a hallway which ended in a swinging pair of double doors. Midway down the hall were two heavy vault-like doors, each with a wall-mounted terminal. One of these was the medical supply room for the floor. The sign above the other simply said, Isolation. The one bright point was the hospital seemed entirely unscavenged. There were no sounds of hellhound claws. It was no mystery anymore why they shunned this place.
Yeah.
Oh dear, came a slightly tinny voice from the other side of the swinging operating room doors. My eyes forward sparkle was picking up two entities, one of which was a non-hostile presence. The other glowed red on the compass. Miss Tulip, I'm afraid you've come down with a serious case of death. I'm afraid this is beyond my meager skills, but I do recommend plenty of bed rest, and I will alert the next available doctor to your condition. The two of us crept down the hallway, stopping at the terminals. The one to the medical supply room was dead, leaving me to pick the lock telekinetically. Good afternoon, Mr. Tester, said the oddly cheery voice. I'm pleased to see some of your color has returned. Let me change your IV tubes good for you. No, don't fuss. You'll only make this harder. The straps are for your own good.
Okay, get your ass in there and save that person.
Sliding reluctantly into place, and the medical supply room opened. I pointed my pit-buck lamp into the dark space, hoping fervently for a spot of luck. Inside were racks of collapsed shelving. A metal cabinet had pulled free from the wall and fallen, catching on a counter edge. The doors had swung open, its contents spilling and shattering on the floor. Zenith took a guarding position as I stepped inside. Moving like prey, with any luck, we would be in and out before either of the entities in the other room noticed our passing. There was one cabinet that looked fairly intact, but from the stains around the bottom of the door, the insides had not fared as well as the exterior. My heart sank into my stomach and started to die. Outside, the chipper voice said, Miss Sunshower, dear, let me put that back on for you. You'll never heal if you keep losing your head like that. My hooves felt terribly heavy as I approached the cabinet. It was locked, and the lock was a tricky one. It took a few tries to open, but that was due in part to the numb dread that was creeping through me. Really, is the cleaning staff completely lazy? Just look at the state of this room. Hardly sanitary. If the Ministry of Peace inspector were to show up, some pony would be out of a job. I wanted to gallop out, find the source of that voice, and buck it to death.
Yeah!
Instead, I settled on opening the cabinet door. Jackpot. Zenith was carefully putting each of the healing poultices and extra strength restoration potions we had found into my saddlebags. We had found less than I had hoped for, but hopefully more than enough. In addition, there was a smaller lockbox which had proven far trickier to open. Inside was an advanced medical spell matrix. I floated the Arcanotech device, a peripheral with intricately enchanted gemstones in the center, out of its box and carried it with me. I'll be right back, I told Zenith, scanning my EFS once again to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a non-hostile presence and a hostile presence, and given what we know of this fucking hospital, you should probably go investigate and kill the hostile presence. Because Because like this could be this could be some dark shit going on in the next room. Okay. And that's all the time I have for today. But fuck it, I'm going for it. I gotta know.
No other hostiles were in the area. Zenith kept watch, ready to pull me back as I crept forward towards the operating room doors. I moved as stealthily as possible, little Macintosh floating close to me. If the red light on my EFS was another of those horrors, I didn't want it to have the time to turn my way. I hoped it wasn't already facing the door. I nudged open the door and looked around. The operating room was full of gurneys, most of which bore the skeleton of a pony. A few were empty, and one held the bloated, fleshy body of one of the horrors. It was strapped down with an IV needle jabbed into it. The IV tube was less than a yard long and dangled off the creature's bulbous mass, the other end attached to nothing. A bright yellow multi-limbed medical bot hovered from gurney to gurney, helping its patients. The blob of flesh wiggled. I unloaded 4 shots into it, little Macintosh echoing throughout the floor. The horror seemed to deflate, filling the air with an awful fetid stench like bile and sewage. I had to turn away, covering my muzzle with my hoof, my eyes watering. I galloped back down the hall, stopping in the waiting room and vomiting violently. The acidic taste of bile in my mouth was actually preferable to the smell of the horror's innards. I swallowed and wiped my muzzle, feeling faint. I turned back, trotting to the door again, bracing myself for the suffocating reek. I pushed in, holding my breath as long as I could, and snuck towards the mouth.
This is why we have gas masks and shit. You might want to look into that, Lil Pip. Getting some facial armor or something.
Functioning medical bot. I could reprogram it, I believed, routing around the corrupted sectors of its programming. And with the advanced medical spell matrix, it would not only have the medical expertise to help, but also be able to utilize a small number of medical spells. Perhaps even ones that Velvet Remedy could learn from it. In the very least, it would be an asset to Junction R7. At best, it could help Velvet Remedy reattach her severed foreleg.
Yeah.
But all that was for later, the trip back. Right now, I just needed to shut it off. I walked out of the operating room.
Okay, we're stopping there. Oh, thank God it wasn't like some sort of fucked up horror I was imagining. Oh, what? Like, I'm horrified by the fact there are rape tentacle monsters in this universe, even if it's just this hospital. On the other hand, the anime nerd and tabletop nerd, because there are tentacle monsters in a lot of video games, you know, like, they exist, so, and they're usually pretty fun to fight. Kind of enjoys having them there as like a nod to both anime and some tabletop games. So I'm like, I'm horrified, but I'm happy horrified. Like, it's fucking weird. You make me feel weird things, K-Cat.